What are some of those early warning signs that you can pass on as advice to other people that are working with contractors like a GC or a builder that are the early indications there might be a problem bubbling under?
If they're asking for too much money up front, we never mind. I mean, we ask for a deposit with our construction company, and that is just, to get things like permits going and secure some materials and so forth. We understand that. If it's a reasonable amount relative to the total price, we're okay to do that. But if someone is asking for 50% of the contract, no.
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Hello, hello, hello. The Real Estate Law Podcast. Jason Muth here. That guy over there is Rory Gill, the attorney and broker from Next Home Titletown Real Estate, Urban Village Legal in Boston. Rory, we have another excellent investor to talk to today. We're going to talk about some markets that we don't know about, like in the Caribbean. And we're going to talk about passive investing and working with partners and some of the problems that she's uncovered along the way in her investment journey. And I'm really eager to learn about all of those topics today.
Yeah, and what I like about today's guest is we have a variety of different ways to approach real estate and investing. A story I think that has a beginning, middle, and a mature phase. So with that, Jason, could you introduce today's guest?
Yes, this is Beth Underhill with Lifestyle Equities Group, and Beth is in Cincinnati, Ohio. Is that right?
That is correct.
Lovely city of Cincinnati. How are things in Ohio?
Things are actually wonderful in Ohio. It's 80 degrees here today. We have some sunshine, low humidity, which we like. So yes, beautiful.
Yeah, we here in the Northeast tend to get your weather about a day later. So the fact that it's 80 there today means it'll be 80 here tomorrow. I just went upstairs and it's a beautiful day here today. We're recording this at the beginning part of the summer, and this is going to come out toward the end of the summer where hopefully it'll still be 80 degrees. So Beth, we were just talking before we hit record, and I didn't realize this until I did some homework today that you are partners with one of our past guests on the podcast, Angie Key. She was a great guest with Ohana Investment Partners, and you and she and some other folks have a great Facebook community, which I'd love to learn more about, and kind of how all that came together.
Absolutely. So through networking with, of course, the wonderful world of Facebook, Angie and I connected it's been almost 2 years now. So we connected, started talking, kept in touch with one another. Both were kind of going back and forth. Where are you going to focus with your investing journey? Are you going to capital raise, focus more on acquisitions and so forth? And we both decided that we had some synergies, and then along came a third individual. Her name is Maria. She actually lives in Florida where Angie does, and they connected. And then we kind of all put it together like, hey, we think that we could make an impact on women particularly. And so the three of us set out to form a Facebook group called Intelligent Investing for Independent Women. We do weekly lives when we can. It's not as consistent, but we try and go live weekly. Sometimes it's the three of us. Sometimes it's just one of us hosting another guest. And we also host webinars where we educate on the benefits of investing in real estate syndications as a passive investor.
Mm-hmm. We've spoken with a number of women on this podcast who have built vibrant investing communities with other women. Can you talk about some of the value of learning from one another, when you're doing it from your peers? Is there an advantage? Is there information that maybe is shared a little more readily if it is a group of women that are having these discussions together? What are some of those benefits, especially for some of the women who are listening to this podcast? What are some of the benefits in getting them invested in some communities of women who are into real estate investing?
Sure. I know for me, investing, especially into asset types like multifamily, student housing in the Caribbean, for example, I never thought I could do that. And in addition to, I didn't think I could do that as a female. So I think there's sort of a safety or a comfort when you are in community with other women and when you see other women who are having success, it pushes you to want that same level of success. We focus heavily on uplifting women in the group. We want to be cheerleaders. We're not there to, just to kind of be envious of what anybody else is doing. It's really empowering. And I think, again, in a space that has been largely dominated by men, it's nice to know that there are pockets or there are places that women can go to for information. If they're just starting out, maybe they feel more comfortable with other women asking questions versus in spaces where it's a combination of male and female. So I don't know. For me, I know it's been beneficial. It's been educational. I've been able to provide education. I've also extracted education. And I just think we're providing, again, a safe zone where newbies especially can launch. So
not just newbies, but experienced investors, if you're looking for new capital partners or looking for new deals, looking for new ideas, investment categories, I'm sure that sharing ideas with women across the country has probably accelerated a number of you in the group to new levels of success.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm investing in things I never thought I would invest in. So all of that's happening.
What's your background? Like, how did you get involved with real estate investing in the first place?
So my background, I've been, I would say, a serial small business owner. My husband and I, a year after I met my husband, we started our first business, of which we still own today. We own an outdoor construction company. We build outdoor living spaces here in Cincinnati, which in Cincinnati is it's a hot product. It allows homeowners to actually utilize an extension of their home almost year round. So we've been doing that since 1999. However, through that process, we loved to host parties, and as a result, I would do all the cooking, and that came from my Italian background of helping my mom in the kitchen all the time. And so I ended up opening up a catering business. When I had my daughter, I closed that down because I knew that catering would entail a lot of weekends and evenings, and I wanted to be a more present parent. So I started an online business for women's golf apparel and accessories. Ran into a little bit of a legal issue and had to sue a competitor, and won a small sum. And I decided, you know what, I think the universe is trying to tell me that I shouldn't be in this space anymore. So then I opened up a fitness studio. And after I was diagnosed with cancer, I opted to close it down. But I had this itch, and I was like, okay, I want to do something. And so my husband and he started watching an infomercial at 2:00 in the morning, and it was about flipping houses. And he's like, we need to attend this workshop and find out more about this. Let's take our expertise of what we know on the outside and let's start doing it on the inside. And that led to us attending a one-day workshop that led to a 3-day weekend event, then a 5-day bus tour. And next thing you know, we were flipping houses, and that's how we got into real estate.
That's the first time that I've heard somebody talk about 2 a.m. infomercials as a gateway into real estate investing.
Yeah.
So, when this was happening and you got into flipping, about what year was this? I'm asking just to kind of get a sense as to what the market was like.
Sure. It was the end of 2018.
Okay.
Oh, not long ago.
No.
Yeah, no. My parents are the risk averse folks, and they are still convinced that like whenever I go to a real estate meetup or seminar that they're going to sell me, a big briefcase full of cassette tapes and, lots of lies and promises, which it's not that at all. I mean, I'm sure there's some of them out there, but I'm in a real estate mastermind. We go to a lot of meetups. Like we've done deals with people that we've met. Like we're huge proponents of networking and being able to kind of accelerate into a new level. It's just interesting that like your husband saw it on TV and was like, honey, we got to do this. And then next thing you know, you're kind of all in on real estate investing for the better.
Yeah. I was at first, I'm like, do we really need to do this? Are you sure? And he's like, let's just go, have an open mind. I'm like, absolutely. So we did. And, we don't regret doing it because it's led us to where we are at today with our investment journey. However, it was a roller coaster ride, and we definitely had our share of challenges to get to this point. But that's just with anything, right? Every business, and I look at this as a business, every business has, it's good days, it's bad days, and you just have to learn how to get through them and problem solve. That's really what it boils down to, is problem solving.
How bought in is your husband still in the real estate world? Is he still involved with everything you're doing?
So he is, actually, for some of our investment opportunities. He is the one that we send to go check out properties. So unfortunately for him, he had to fly down to Antigua not too long ago to look at a potential investment opportunity. I mean, poor guy, there for 5 days and,
Right.
with the sun and the sand and just enjoying life. But yeah, that's his role, actually. He checks out the opportunities from a construction perspective and then reports back, and then we take it from there.
Yeah,
That is quite a role. Rory, talk about we were in Antigua and Rory had to do, he had to work a little bit. We were like on a kayak somewhere.
Well, I mean, it was just kind of a taste of a life that I don't think was really mine. But, we're in Antigua in a beautiful, beautiful spot far away. And I pick up my cell phone to process a couple wires related to my business. And I felt like I was just in the upper 1% of the world. It's not the day to day, but that's how I did it. And it was really more a testament to my inability to farm out work and let other people do it, that I was still doing work myself from down there. But that was my experience in Antigua. And I do remember that. And before we come back to that image of being able to fly to Antigua, scope out potential investments, I want to, go back to the beginning where maybe it felt a little less glamorous and a little less put together. Can you tell us about your first forays into real estate investing?
Absolutely. So my husband and I, sometimes we don't always listen to what we should be doing. So we attended this 5-day bus tour and walked away with, what not to do. And I think we just kind of tossed that out the window. Shame on us. It would have saved us some headaches, some monies, some heartache, actually. But our first venture into it, we actually had 2 properties under contract within 3 months. Both of them were fix and flips in great areas of Cincinnati. Older homes that just needed some TLC. And well, not just a little TLC, but actually a lot of TLC. I mean, they hadn't been touched since probably the 60s and 70s. So we went into both of them with an investor that we had met actually on our bus tour. And we had hired this contractor. The contractor was someone that my husband and I had previously worked with our outdoor construction company. And we thought he was reliable. Unfortunately, this particular contractor was in a bit of hot water with some other projects he had going on. And just like some of those horror stories that you hear, he was asking for money and utilizing that money to, robbing Peter to pay Paul, using it for some of the other projects that he was behind on. And he kept promising, like, I'm going to get to your projects. I'm going to get to your projects. And we would continuously have meeting after meeting after meeting on site at both of the fix and flip projects with empty promises. So we entered into the first one in January of 2019. That's when we finally officially signed the contract. It was 2018 that we had first saw the property. And then the other one was in March of that same year. So within 2 months, we had these 2 properties. By the time November rolled around, neither property wasn't even close to 50% complete. We fired the contractor. The contractor became very upset. He began threatening us with text messages, voicemails, pictures that he would send via text message. And finally, one day, he sent this picture of a rifle scope to my husband and said, "Look what I got for Christmas." And it was at that point that we decided, you know what, we think we need to enlist the help of our lawyer, and we need a restraining order. We were scared. We weren't sure how serious this gentleman was. So we ended up filing a restraining order against him. And once we filed that, of course, then he filed a lien on both of the properties, indicating that he was still owed money, that he had completed the projects. And the one thing about liens, which depending on whose side that you're on, as a contractor, for us, yes, it works in our favor. But if you're on the opposite side, which we were at that particular point in time, the liens really work more for the contractor. So we were in a position that once we finished these, he wasn't about to take these liens off, and we were either going to have to pay him some money to just remove these liens, or in order to get the liens off, or we ended up having to get a bond, so that we could sell the properties and then continue to settle with this particular contractor. So it was quite the journey. One house finished and sold about a year after we had entered into a contract with it. The other one, it took a little bit longer, a few extra months. Both of them, one sold immediately. We had it under contract first day it went on. The other one took a little bit longer. So needless to say, from an investment perspective, although we produced two absolutely beautiful renovations, we lost money. We had the headache of going through the restraining order, the lien, losing money with all of that. And really after that, the investor that the three of us, the investor that had joined in on the deal, we all just decided, we're parting ways, and good luck. And that was that. But we continue to push forward and do more flips. But eventually we really just got to the point where we decided, what? This is just another layer of what we're already doing. We build these outdoor living spaces. We have that process down. Either we're not very good at this, or we're just finding the wrong people to help us with it. And that's when we pivoted into multifamily, student housing, and hotels.
Mm-hmm. Really sorry that that's what happened to you in your first year doing it. Even where we sit, as an attorney, that's not necessarily the problem that I'm screening for with a contractor or anything like that. There are all these things that you can imagine going wrong. That really isn't one of them that would occur to me. So I don't know. You pivoted your strategy a little bit, but is there anything that you did differently after that experience, particularly when you're working with contractors?
Oh, absolutely. We had ironclad agreements, number one. Number two, we made sure that we were using people from Angie's List, reputable, people that had, and here it is, this is somebody that we had previously worked with, right? So we thought, okay, he did a good job for our outdoor living construction company. Why would that not be the case with our renovations? But we were definitely more stringent in our screening process. We were on these contractors. They were going to get draws. They had to abide by our contract in terms of timelines and so forth. So we learned our lesson. And honestly, the properties that followed after that, we had so much more success. And I think that, again, newbies, we never should have taken on two properties at one time. That was something that we totally just let, just did not listen to, as far as, one of those rules. When you're first starting off, just start with one. Make sure you get through it okay. Figure out what your mistakes were, what you did right, what you did wrong, and then adjust and go forth. But with two under contract and trying to manage and handle both of them, it was even a lot for us having to deal with after the contractor actually, after we fired him. So.
Beth, what are some of those early warning signs that you can pass on as advice to other people that are working with contractors like a GC or a builder, that are the early indications there might be a problem bubbling under?
If they're asking for too much money up front, we never mind. I mean, we ask for a deposit with our construction company, and that is just, to get things like permits going and secure some materials and so forth. And we understand that. If it's a reasonable amount relative to the total price, we're okay to do that. But if someone is asking for 50% of the contract, no. Maybe a quarter of it, something like that, 10%. That's number one. Number two, if, it's sort of like that, 3 strikes you're out. If you say you're going to be there on Tuesday and you don't show up, and you come back with, something like, XYZ client wanted us to do this for them today, we'll be there on Thursday. If they don't show up Thursday, then I would start to worry. And if they give you another excuse after that, I give them one more chance, and then gone. But even at that stage, you have to be careful how much, you've given over to them. I would definitely look on Angie's List, places like that for reputable contractors, talk to other people, get references, see if they've done other projects, ask to go see those particular projects so you know quality of work. That is something that can really, especially with renovations. And we were doing what I would consider higher end renovations. So we would maybe buy a house for $300,000, put $265,000 into it. And that might include one house in particular that, two houses that happened with. One was we added 1,000 square foot addition, and the other one, it was a ranch house, and we popped the top and built a second story onto it. So, if you are doing renovations of that size, you want to make sure that, when you're selling $800,000 homes, that the quality is there. Otherwise, you're not going to get that ARV. And needless to say, your profit margin isn't going to be what you thought it was going to be.
Rory and I just built a beautiful lake home that we're using as a short-term rental. It's our 5th property, and we used a builder that we found on Facebook, of all places. And maybe we just lucked out. We had an excellent experience. I thought we were great clients also, but there was a degree of trust that we had during the entire process. And, just to kind of touch on what you mentioned about asking for money up front, like, he didn't. We had a construction loan. We funded that. The bank funded the rest. There were construction draws, 6 or 7 draws throughout the course of the year. The very first draw, I got him the check the next day because the bank was fast on that. And I think he appreciated that. And I think that probably set the tone for the rest of the relationship throughout. But wow, we didn't have that experience at all. And it's not to say that more builders are like the experience we had, or they're like the experience that you had. I think that there's a whole range of contractors in all different trades, and you can vet somebody. I mean, you said you worked with this person before and it just didn't work out, right? And I never worked with this other person before and it worked out great. And I got to shout him out, Rick Morgan with Threshold Construction or Threshold Building. I forget the name of the company, but I got to put his number or email address or something in these show notes. He just did a fabulous job. I won't put your builder, Scott, in the show notes here, but that's just such great advice, because people are looking to flip houses still. They're looking to build houses and they don't know where to start. And I think that the questions of, geez, who do I reach out for this? How do I build my team? People hear about stories like yours, they get nervous. And, I'm almost surprised you guys continued pushing forward after that experience, and credit to you and your husband for just saying, all right, let's, wash our hands of this. Let's move on to the next one, right?
I think it's been sort of innate in us to just continue to push forward. We knew we could do it better. And we knew that this experience was not going to be indicative of all of our experiences. And in some ways, I think we just wanted to prove it to ourselves that we can get better at this. And it wasn't going to stop us. We had other investors who approached us after we posted pictures on Facebook of our before and after. And they were like, hey, how do we get involved with you guys? And so we thought, well, if there's other people out there, we still can do it. And, we haven't totally said we would never go back and do it. I think now we know exactly who we would use, our process. I mean, I have it down to a science in terms of, tile choices, carpet, paint, colors, all of that. I enjoyed the design component because I did all the design work. So that was really part of the fun is seeing the transformation.
So then how do you take that into the Caribbean? Because that's a whole different market. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start finding contractors on some of those Caribbean islands. What are the islands where you've been investing or that you're hot on? And, where does somebody go about feeling confident that they're going to be entering into a profitable deal in the Caribbean?
Sure. So, with the Caribbean, as all of us know, post-COVID, the travel, once travel opened up, it was like the floodgates. And as soon as people could start traveling down to the Caribbean, they were. You hear stories every single day, JetBlue, Frontier, and so forth. They're adding, more flights to this location, that location, and so forth. And we didn't even have that going on pre-pandemic. So it's been pretty exciting to see what's happening down in the Caribbean. And really, there's just a lot of tired owners down there. owners who were able to weather the storm through the pandemic and now have decided, you know what, I just don't think I want to have to worry about having to go through that again. The one property in particular that we are looking at that I sent my husband to, it's an older couple. They're Italian. They want to go back to Italy, and that's where they want to live the remaining years. And they are like, you know what, we've been through this, and you know, we've kind of made sure that the property itself has come back post-COVID, and it's doing better than it was pre-COVID right now. So, which is very encouraging. And that's really what we're looking for, are those owners who have, again, weathered the storm and are waving the flag and saying, you know what, we're done and we want to move forward. So yes, now I do have a hotel that's in Panama, Central America. That is, I raised some capital for that particular deal, so I have equity in that. And that one that one's more of a value add than the other one that we're looking at that is in Antigua. But anyways, we've raised some capital, slow going with the renovations, but that's where you have, if you're going to be doing renovations, especially in these countries where, you know, you don't maybe quite have those relationships, that's where maybe any of your accountants, local accountants that you're using, attorneys, real estate agents, the brokers and so forth, that's where really they come into play. I know this hotel in Antigua, we have relied heavily on the broker for referrals to who we can use, who can help us with, you know, everything from the pool to, you know, maybe constructing more deck space, building a dock, et cetera, et cetera. So, so yeah, I mean, there are contractors down there. Getting materials is probably the biggest issue because, of course, they don't have all the materials there. It's not as easily available as it is here in the United States. So planning is important, but these properties are cash flowing. People are there. The one property in Antigua had several nights of 100% occupancy in January, February, March. I think the average occupancy was 85% in February and March. So it's very exciting to see this happening, and we're excited to take over the property and see what we can do to continue to improve it. The owners actually, they closed the property down 4 months out of the year just because they want to go back to Italy for a period of time. And could you imagine if it wasn't closed for 4 months out of the year, how much more revenue and cash flow there would be with the property?
How do you go about financing these properties outside the United States?
Well, you know, a lot of times it's going to be a couple different ways. For instance, the deal in Panama, we have a master lease agreement with that. So with the master lease, it's 5 years. It allows us the opportunity to reposition the property and then be able to get acquainted with the banks and the lending institutions local to the area so that we can go in and eventually finance things that way. With this other property in Antigua, we have a seller carry. So we are finding a lot of seller carries, especially with properties. Now, sometimes the seller carry is not going to be as significant as you might want it to be. It's not going to be maybe 75%. So you might be left raising, you know, 50% of the purchase price. But yeah, that's primarily, you know, what's happening with those properties. So.
And what's the marketplace to find deals like this?
In terms of how to find them?
Yeah. Like, how did you find this couple and how did you find this property?
Sure. Facebook is a good resource. I know other investors who are already investing down in the Caribbean, and they end up, you know, creating these relationships with other brokers, and then they might pass on a deal because they have too much committed already. So they will bring deals to other Facebook groups. There's a couple of different resources, actual websites that focus on Caribbean properties. And that's how I've met some of my potential partners, is just through these websites. and linking up with the webmaster who is sort of running the site. And that particular person knows of other investors, and then they've made the introductions and connections and so forth. So yeah, it's been very interesting to see. But what I did find is that as I pivoted into the commercial real estate space and started connecting with people in Facebook, it was like this snowball effect. As soon as I was introduced to one person, either a potential investor or a broker, that led to another person that I would be introduced to. And once you start letting people know what you're doing, what your interests are, they keep you in the back of your mind. And I get emails all the time. Hey, Beth, I remember you talking about how you love the hospitality industry, and would you be interested in something like this? And I'm shown a deal. So yeah, I think it's just, again, it's the power of networking.
Yeah, that's such a great lesson. I mean, Facebook actually really does connect people who are like-minded. I just found a contractor on Facebook, not my builder, but somebody to just clear away a pile of brush literally 2 days ago. No, yesterday I went up there and found him a couple days earlier. And then I found out that his wife is, has a cleaning business, because I always talk to people and I always ask the question, so tell me what else you do, because you never know what else they're working on. Like I learned that his mom has some long-term rentals and a short-term rental in the town next to ours, and that his wife has a cleaning business. And I'll file that information away. You never know when you're going to need it, right?
Right.
You talk to somebody, especially in a market like Panama or Antigua or any remote markets. Using your broker is great advice to try to build a network of people up. In fact, Rory, we tried to do that with our broker up in Guilford, and he said he would, but then we never heard back from him. So I had to go do all that myself. But that's okay. If you ask people, sometimes they're super willing to help, and they say, "Oh, I know this person. This person could help with this, and then that person could help with this." Next thing you know, you have your network.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about lifestyle equities. Like, what else are you up to? Like, you're raising money for deals in the United States as well. Like, what type of asset classes?
Sure. Student housing primarily. So I actually handle the marketing for another group called MTN Investment Group. And we focus on value add and income producing properties. And as of late, the properties that have come into our pipeline have been predominantly student housing properties. So we closed on one student housing property at the end of 2022 in December, 126 bed student housing Class A property in Milledgeville, Georgia. We have another one under contract, Class A, in Murfreesboro, which is just outside of Nashville. And we have a third one under contract in Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia. We're looking at one in Clemson today as we speak, and another one in Northwest Arkansas. So we have one of our principals, he comes from a student housing background. He used to work for Landmark Properties, which of course is one of the largest student housing companies that owns and also manages those types of properties. So he comes from that background, and he brings all of his connections and pipeline, and that's how we've been able to be able to take down these properties and have access to them. So we're pretty excited about it. Hoping to close on the one in Murfreesboro at the end of this month, the one in Athens probably sometime in August, and Northwest Arkansas more than likely will be later this year or into next year.
So could I ask about student housing? These are existing buildings, right?
Correct.
That you're purchasing, you're doing renovations, value adds, to improve, the facilities or the amenities. And are they like dorms, where it's just a bedroom and common shared bathrooms and living facilities, or are they individual apartments?
You would not believe what students are living in these days.
I know, right?
It is not the typical dorm that you think about back in, the 80s when I went to school.
Or the early 90s when I went to school, probably the same dorms that had no air conditioning or cable. I mean,
exactly. Right. No televisions, nothing like that. The bunk beds and whatnot. But anyways, no, these are, so for instance, the property that we closed on at the end of December in Milledgeville, they're cottage houses. So they are 2-story houses, anywhere from 4 to 6 bedrooms. Each bedroom has its own bathroom attached to it. And then there is the common space where there's the kitchen, living room, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, these beautiful veranda porches where we're putting flat screen TVs, outside hanging underneath these porches. So they're living large. They really are. And I mean, just absolutely, very spacious. It's like living at home practically. So that's one type. Now this asset up in Murfreesboro, there's four studios actually within a common area, and in each studio is the bed, the closet. It's got a small kitchenette. You have your own bathroom, and then in the main space is another, like a full kitchen. Let's see, there's a dining room, living space, and then washer and dryer. So again, beautiful, beautiful properties. And these are all Class A properties. So we don't actually have to go in and do, too much in terms of value add. So the business plan is generally to push rents because, some of these properties are coming from the developer themselves, and developers tend to develop, lease up, hold on, and then they sell it. So they're never pushing rents because they want to essentially sell when there's 100% occupancy, which bodes better for them from in terms of a purchase price. So, or a sale price, I should say. And so from that standpoint, we take these assets on and we have to do very little to them other than push rents, manage the property, improve efficiencies, and they're cash flowing from day one. So our investors absolutely love receiving a distribution within 1 to 2 quarters after we've secured the asset.
Yeah. And these are not connected directly to any of the universities, right? It's all privately held, right? So if you're signing a lease with a student, it's not going through student housing or anything like that. It's a separate deal.
No, and we're actually signing the lease with the parents.
Yeah.
So the parents are the ones that it's going to be their credit if something goes wrong. It's going to be their credit card if something goes wrong. We'll swipe that. And they're 12-month leases. So regardless of whether or not they're there for the summer, they're paying for, an entire year.
Rory, these are like 2 new strategies we haven't even talked about on this podcast yet. And, just when you think 117 episodes in or whatever number this is, we've talked about everything. We certainly have not. Well,
yeah. And it's also, it's striking to me that in a relatively short period of time, we've evolved from, kind of the single family flip into now purchasing hotel properties outside of the country and large student housing complexes within the country. That's a really rapid evolution within the real estate space.
I think so, but you know what? I just put my nose to the ground and went to work. I was just determined to do this 180 and kind of flip it around, so to speak, from our experience with the single family fix and flips. So making up for lost time, I guess.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I mean, you also alluded to the fact that you went to college in the 80s. You volunteered that information. So I could imagine you're just a couple years older than me. And you probably started down this journey, like 6 years ago in the real estate world. So, another lesson here, for all you 40 and 50 somethings listening to this podcast, you are never too old to start down this pathway, right? In fact, I think, Beth, the wisdom that we have with the work that we've all done, you've an entrepreneur, I worked in business for over 25 years. I think that we could take that to this type of work, screw the limiting beliefs and say, hey, what's the direction where we want to go with our real estate investing?
Yeah, I had never thought I'm too old to be doing anything. I mean, maybe some things, right? But no, I mean, just really like this. I mean, why not? I am a firm believer that, the more you stay busy, the more you educate yourself, the more you're learning, it keeps your mind fresh. It keeps you just youthful overall, mind, body, and soul. So that's, again, if I had to pivot again for whatever reason, I would do so. I'm not, though. I'm here to stay, and this is where I want to be. But if for whatever reason, and the universe said, hey, Beth, you need to be doing something different, I would welcome it and say, okay, what do I need to do to make it happen?
You could always continue what you're doing right now, building beautiful backyards that people could spend time in, right? This is great. This is a great discussion. I want to get to the final couple questions that we ask all of our guests just to get to know you a little bit better and to tie up the loose ends of the interview. And then we can find out exactly where people can reach out to you if they want to learn more about any of the things we talked about, if they want to invest with you, if they want to join your community. We'll get to that in a little bit. And of course, we'll link all that stuff up in the show notes. So first question we have, if you can get on stage, Beth, and talk about any specific subject in the world for half an hour with no preparation, what would that be?
I could talk about powerlifting for a half hour with no preparation.
I saw that on your Instagram. What's happening there?
Sure. So about 5 years ago, I decided that from a physical and mental standpoint, I needed a challenge. And I had just closed down my fitness studio where we predominantly taught group fitness classes. But I personally wanted a challenge, and it was either going to be bodybuilding or powerlifting. I wasn't sure which one. And after doing research on both, I opted for powerlifting because I liked that it was more objective. You either lift the weight or you don't. Whereas with bodybuilding, it tends to be a bit more subjective. You have 4 or 5 gals who are on stage in a bikini with their spray tans and they've worked their tails off. And judges decide on their muscularity. And I'm thinking to myself, why would I want to put myself through that? So anyways, I opted for powerlifting and enlisted the help of a coach who told me that I had some deficiencies and I could not compete for at least a year until I improved on those deficiencies. So we worked on that for a year. And then about, I think it was about a year and a half after I had been training with him, I was allowed to compete in my first powerlifting meet, which I did, and just became completely addicted. And from there, I started to do more regional meets, and eventually I competed nationally. So I hold both national and state records for my age and weight class.
Oh my God. Rory, what are we doing?
Not that.
I feel like when we hit the red button on this interview, I have to go lift some weights or something. That's fantastic. That's great. And yeah, you're right. You know what? You're showing that we're all getting older, but I don't feel like I'm old either. Right. I think that it's tough for younger people to see people like our age as young, but I see myself as 16 years old, still that kid that went to college, right? I'm sure you kind of see yourself in that as well, because we've lived that life. Right. And you're never too old to take up something like powerlifting or raising capital, or, it's such a great lesson. Second of these questions, tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
Probably watching my dad work. My dad was a small business owner. He co-owned a shoe store, Januzzi Shoes, in Northeast Ohio with my uncle. It was passed down. My grandfather started it after he came over from Italy. And just watching my dad's work ethic was really what instilled me to follow in his footsteps. He was hoping that I would become an accountant, but I was like, Dad, I just don't think that that's for me. I would rather be a small business owner and do what you did. And so he's been my inspiration. And I think that's why I always work as hard as I do. Maybe I'm still trying to prove something to him. I don't know. Maybe he's up in heaven right now, looking down on me. And hopefully he's smiling with everything that we've done and all the successes that we've had.
I'm sure he is. Did he come over from Italy, or was he born in the U.S.?
He was born in the U.S.
Okay. Final question we have. Tell us something you're listening to or watching or reading these days.
I am listening to, it's on YouTube. I know it's a book, but I found it on YouTube, the recording and so forth. It's called Prosperity by Russell. Is it Russell Wilson? No, that doesn't sound right.
He's the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Prosperity. Let's look it up. P-R-O.
I can look it up here. Let's see here.
I'm just going to look up Prosperity Russell, and the magic of YouTube tells me that it's, I don't know.
Dr. Robert Russell. That's what it is.
Dr. Robert Russell,
Robert
putting
Russell.
the prosperity idea to work. Yeah, prosperity. Okay.
You too can be prosperous. So I am listening to that right now, and I have been listening to it since November. So it's like 2.5, 3 hours long. I re-listen to it like once a month just to continually keep my mind going down the path that I want it to go. And it just really talks the bottom line is, what we think is what we become. And that is just a life lesson for anybody. So getting the cobwebs out, trying not to focus on the negative, but focusing on the positive. And I think when you do so, you see all of the abundance that is around you.
Absolutely. Well, soon you'll be able to recite that book if you keep listening to it over and over and over. Beth, where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about you or Lifestyle Equities?
Sure. They can email me at beth@lifestyleequitiesgroup.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Investing with Beth. I'm on TikTok at Investing with Beth. You can always phone or text me, 513-470-1078. And I'm pretty responsive via text message. You can also friend request me, the Beth Underhill on Facebook.
And if you go to lifestyleequitiesgroup.com, you can see some of the portfolio that you're working on right now, just like I'm looking at. So,
yep.
Rory, where can people reach out to you?
People can find me through my real estate brokerage. That's Next Home Titletown, nexthometitletown.com, or through my law practice, Urban Village Legal. That's urbanvillagelegal.com.
All right. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast or have questions for Beth or me or Rory, you could reach out to me, Jason at nexthometitletown.com. We love reviews of the podcast. We love comments, and we really appreciate your listening. Beth, or watching. You might be watching this. Beth, thank you very much for all of your insight, for taking us on a journey of how you've gotten to where you are today, talking about asset classes that we have not discussed yet on this podcast, overcoming some adversity, really digging into what to do when a situation's going bad and how to move beyond that. So many great lessons that you've taught me, and I'm sure Rory and our audience as well. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you back and tell Angie we said hi. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll be one of your investors at one point.
There you go. I'd love that.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Rory. And thank you for listening or watching. We'll see you next time.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Council, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.